I'm Rebecca.
I'm Vicki.
This is Aging Answers, a podcast for families sorting out senior services.
If you're helping a parent or planning for yourself, we make the maze simple.
We cover care at home, assisted living, memory care, transportation, safety, and money questions.
We also explain benefits, Medicare, Medicaid, VA, and how they actually work in real life.
Each episode, you'll get a quick map of your options and simple next steps. No jargon.
No guilt.
Just clear answers so you can move forward.
Welcome back to Aging Answers, the podcast for families sorting out senior services. If you're helping a parent or planning for yourself, we make the maze simple. I'm with Rebecca this morning. She's my co-host and also a good friend, and she works at Manor Lake. Rebecca?
Yes. Yeah, so I work with Manor Lake. They are a locally owned company, and they offer independent living, assisted living, and memory care. And so we're kind of deep diving into today about when is it the right time? How do I convince my parent? Or like, what are some red flags? That kind of thing.
What are all the options? Yeah. And I feel like it is better to look way early into, the memory, whether it's memory care or whether it's just assisted living. And there are differences. And sometimes people still call it nursing home when it isn't nursing home. That is so completely different.
Yeah, we're not doing the 1980s Shady Pines, Golden Girl. Like, we're not doing that. It's very lively. I think it shocks people. Even though it's hard to move from your home, it is never easy at any age. When they move in, it's like you're back in college dorms. It's exciting. And so it gives them like a spark of life sometimes. There can be some decline depending on the situation if there's dementia involved. But for the most part, we see a lot of people just come back to themselves. So it's a really beautiful thing, even though it's scary.
I agree. And there is a lot of social interaction that they miss living at home. Mm-hmm. So what would you say are let's say there's somebody that has an aging parent now and they have waited and now they're really, what are some of the signs that they should really start looking at assisted living?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing is just cleanliness in the home, cleanliness in their clothing, how they're eating, I think is a big red flag. If they're eating, a lot of people will live on, popcorn, peanut butter, crackers, reheat meals that you bought for them and they never made. So those kind of red flags where you see them losing weight, they're losing vitamins as well. I know we have loved ones that they'll eat Chick-fil-A every day if you let them. So we just have to be mindful of that. I think also just their balance. If you watch them and their balance is off, they're walking weird, they're favoring a leg, that's something to be on the lookout for. Also, just overall forgetfulness. Like if they go outside and then they're like, what was I doing? That could easily turn into a nightmare where they're walking down the road and they forget which house is theirs, things like that. I think also if they are struggling with friends, like if they're very lonely and people aren't coming to see them, that can definitely be a red flag. What are some that you see as a real estate agent? You help a lot of seniors.
Well, I feel like, first of all, is the house safe for them? If they want to stay, I know a lot of seniors who really want to stay in their house. But when you look at it, is the neighborhood safe? But is the house itself safe? Are there stairs? Like you said, if they're not cooking or if they are trying to cook, how safe is that? How close is the person that's going to be helping them navigate through their senior years? Are they on the same property or next door? Or are they 10 minutes away? Because if they're 10 minutes away, sometimes it's not feasible for them to stay long term in their house. I mean, even if they want to, it would be a good time to start looking at options. Houses with stairs, that's one of the first. If they have to go in and out of stairs to get in and out of the house, that's a huge thing. And can a ramp be built onto the back of the house? So I help them look at their property and see what long-term looks like for them. And if the house can be modified, and if their loved one is close enough, if they do have a support system, close enough to help.
Yes, and I'm totally pro staying in your home as long as it's safe and it's good for the well-being, they're not lonely. They've got that great support system. Even local churches, local Kiwanis, like there's a lot of other community groups that can come in and help people. And so I love that as well. And I don't think that senior living is the best answer for every single person. We're not cookie cutter people, so we can't force everyone into a certain box. And so it really is finding the right solution for you, what the affordability is, because not everybody can afford in-home care, or not everybody can afford a fancy place downtown by their daughter. So there's a lot of different options that we can look at.
Right. And I try to help them feel like, whether they can afford it or not, whether it's selling the home and using that money to be able to afford the end of life care that they need, or whether it's, keeping the house and getting a property manager to rent it and using that rental income along with what their income is. A lot of times we did that for my mother-in-law when she needed memory care. We were able to rent her home. And, we didn't have to hire a property manager because my brother-in-law lives very close by, but it was perfect for our situation.
Yes,
when she needed.
And I also want to throw out there Airbnb. Airbnb is a great solution. You don't want to move their furniture out of the home. You can't find a perfect person. There are management companies that will go in and manage an Airbnb for you, and then they'll be making $1,200 plus to supplement some of that. So even if they were living in your home and you brought in care, that could be $1,200 plus going towards that. And I think there's a lot of other solutions to think about.
Right. And there's Furnish Finders, which is, a lot of traveling nurses use that. And you are leaving the furniture in the house. You're just removing the personal items. And you actually will make more money doing like an Airbnb or the Furnish Finders than you were a traditional long-term rental. And it's really, I find it not to be as problematic as like dealing with a long-term tenant and what, happens to the house with, a
long-term tenants. Yeah.
Long-term tenants.
Exactly.
Which it's not a bad thing, and maybe somebody that needs a long-term, house to run and it works out for your family.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, I feel like a lot of times it is better to wait to sell the house, after, the person passes away, because I feel like it generates income. And if they have to, it gives them the long-term financial.
Yeah. And I think it also depends on their situation. So if you have someone who's only making $1,400 with Social Security, and then you need to supplement for memory care, you may have to sell the home, and you can't supplement, $3,000, you need $5,000, whatever the pricing is.
Right.
And so it really depends on what the family needs. But I do appreciate that we can both partner with families or a lot of other support systems to figure out what the best solution is. We try to problem solve, again, not in like a cookie cutter fashion.
Exactly. And everybody is different. And, I think for a lot of people, their family isn't close by. They're out of state.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for people like that, they really need to look into an assisted living, or at the very least to start with like a 55 and over community, which is got a lot of people in it, where you have a lot of support people around. Because if you're taking care of your aging parents and they're in a different state, then a lot of parents can be very, they can fool you over the phone that everything is okay.
Yes.
And you're not there visiting every week. You're not seeing that the house is in disarray, that the refrigerator has food stocked in, if you don't have somebody going by the house.
Yes.
And, sometimes, just you could start with somebody once a week to help, with a home care person.
Yes.
And so, it's,
yeah, there are lots of different options, I think, for those types of solutions. And I kind of wanted to get into the different styles of living options, like what is a 55 and up community? What does that look like for a mature adult? On to independent living, assisted living, memory care, and if ever needed, a personal care home or potentially skilled nursing, which is a traditional nursing home. And so kind of 55 and up, you can probably talk more about that than I can.
So the 55 and up communities, most of them will allow somebody else living in the house that's under 55. The percentage of the houses that are sold, the people have to be 55 or over. One person in the house has to be 55 and over, but not everybody. Every community is a little different, but it does allow for a caregiver that would be staying in the house that's, say, in their 20s or 30s to be able to stay in the house and take care of somebody as they age. So the 55 and over communities, most of the time, they're in the 75 range.
And they do a lot of programming and concerts, and they have pickleball and
yes, they have pools, a swimming pool, they have water aerobics, they have, there's small communities up to larger communities. There's single family homes, and then there's duplex or quad homes that so they're, depending on the community, depending on the price, a single family home is going to be more expensive than, say, a quad. They're not inexpensive options, but something like that you're going to be able to stay at home. You could sell your home, and if it doesn't have enough equity to buy it outright, you could get a reverse mortgage. But I would be very careful of that to make sure that, in 15 years, you then don't have to move into assisted living because you've eaten up your equity. So that's, like you said, it's not a cookie cutter. It's looking at everybody individually and seeing what they need.
Yeah. And then it's a good bridge into senior living. So a lot of times you can stay in a 55 and up community until you need assisted living, if ever needed assisted living. The step in between, though, is the independent living. So every community with independent living is a smidge different. The way that Manor Lake does it is it's kind of all-inclusive as far as utilities go, your Wi-Fi, your TV, and then you get one meal a day. Now, other independent livings, and we also offer, housekeeping, pest control, maintenance, that type of thing. We do one meal a day. Other communities, it might be 3 meals a day, and they may offer some care. Some of the independent livings are set up in an apartment style versus we have cottages. So it's all a little bit different. It depends on what that person's needing. And then as far as care goes, we partner with a care person, a care team, to try to make it more affordable in the cottages for care, versus us having our own staff go out and do the care. We don't offer that because it is independent. They're still a lot of them still drive, not everybody. And then your next step is going to be your assisted living. And so that's where the state kind of has some authority. We have to follow rules and guidelines to make sure that they're safe and protected. The main thing is having somebody 24/7 in the building that's there in case something does happen. Typically, they have physical therapy in the building. It does include your housekeeping, more in-depth housekeeping, 3 meals a day, snacks, tons of activities, a bus to go to appointments, and then also go shopping weekly. So it's just a little bit more all enthralled. And then different communities do different things with assisted. So for care, it could be a care plan. It could be levels of care. And so that it just depends. Hopefully you can find an option that's very tailored to your loved one, where it's not a cookie cutter thing. And a lot of times with the levels of care, it gets a little messy because different levels can mean different things. And so from my understanding, a lot of different people that do levels of care, you can get medicine reminders and some reminders, or, we can take them into the dining room, make sure they're not missing things. That's all included for level 1. Level 2, it could be med management and bathing. Well, what if you don't need med management? Then you're back to level 1. So it's kind of a conglomerate, but they really try to do it to save money for the families, because if you did do it one at a a la carte, it could get a little bit crazy because, there's 6 reminders, but 2 of those reminders could be put into one reminder. Hey, brush your teeth and get dressed.
Right.
That kind of thing. And then your next step from there is memory care, which I think I'm going to let you speak about that because you've been there with your loved one and you know a lot about it.
So the memory care was all inclusive, and they do have a staff. It is secure. So the memory care patients are not able to leave the facility, which is great. They are able to go outside. There is a small outside area. And I would say that they still try to do activities. Depending on, my mother-in-law was had frontal temporal dementia, which was really bad. There were people there that had just mild dementia or Alzheimer's, just beginning. So it really depends, but it's if they wander off, if their propensity to wander off, you would want memory care. If they need help with their medication, not just a reminder to take their medication, but if they need the medication administered, then you would need memory care. If they need different medications and they need to work with a nurse, I would say memory care is, we had my mother-in-law on hospice, but I know palliative care also helps where they can adjust medications, because at that point, there are a lot of adjustments to be made. There's daily adjustments. And they allow hospice to come in. So if you have hospice, they will take care of the showering 3 times a week, which is very helpful to not only the patient, but also the facility.
Yeah, and I think memory care, so it's really, the goal is safety and also more attention. So for the state of Georgia, it's 1 to 12 caregiver ratio. And so we do try to staff to acuity versus just what the state regulation requires. Because if you think about it, you've got one person that's a 2-person assist to go to the bathroom. You're already needing a third, to watch everybody else. And so you got to think about that as you're visiting these options and picking out kind of your favorite places. There's also a lot of technology coming out now with memory care. So one thing that Manor Lake has in all of our communities is an Augie system. And so it is now we can see, it's a motion detection device that kind of learns the person, the resident. And so it sees if they start to get out of bed, but they're a fall risk, it alerts us on a phone. And then the caregivers can go in and try to mitigate, okay, do you need help going to the bathroom? Or is this person, could they potentially fall? Or are they twisted up in their covers and they might roll up out of that bed? We don't want that.
Right.
And so I love the Augie system. I love what it's doing. And I think that there's going to be a lot more skilled nursing facilities and also memory care assisted livings that are going to be starting to use this new, it's an augmented system. It's really exciting. And then the other thing that I'd love to speak about memory care a little bit is, if you find the right option, it can be really, really great because they are getting more specific attention and it is a smaller environment. So with dementia specifically, which is an umbrella term, but they can get overwhelmed in big spaces. They can get overwhelmed with the amount of people talking. They can get overwhelmed by loud sounds. So when you're in a memory care environment, we want it to be a little bit calmer with some scheduled chaos for fun. So we want them to play volleyball and balloon. We hit balloons with noodles and things like that. We want that too. That's exercise. But we also want them to, if they're having a bad day and there's multiples having a bad day, especially weather related, if it's cold and rainy outside, they're just going to want to snuggle in and watch a movie together. They're not going to want to do all the fun activities that we had planned. So sometimes it's also knowing what makes them happy and being an advocate and a voice for them as well. I think that's so important. And I think just to touch on, for memory care, some red flags is really wearing the same outfits every single day, refusing to change. They have that favorite shirt and they won't let it go, or they're losing their words a lot. They start to eat lunch and they're using their fingers and not a fork. Because that's a dignity piece. I don't want someone sitting in a dining room in any situation, even with their own family, and get embarrassed trying to eat pork roast. I mean, that's not okay.
Right.
In any scenario. We don't want that for them. And so that's some red flags for memory care. And then that can start being a conversation.
Right. I think that our brain, when it is a pattern of repetitiveness, sometimes you think that they're doing okay, but just because they're in a pattern of doing the same thing every day. So it's the different things that pop in, so you take them to a restaurant and they have a straw. Well, they haven't had a straw in a month. And all of a sudden that straw is a foreign object to them. They don't know how to put the straw in the drink. That's a red flag. Mm-hmm. And if you're close to somebody where you're seeing them weekly, you see things that happen that are out of the ordinary, like the outfits. And They don't know how to work the washing machine one day all of a sudden. And when they get to that point, it's a danger for them to live by themselves. I feel like are they going to turn the stove on and forget that they turned the stove on? And are they going to catch the house on fire?
Mm-hmm.
And, for my mother-in-law, she walked across the street, which was a pretty busy street on a blind curve, because the neighbor was out there who she didn't even know.
Mm.
And my brother-in-law saw her, so we knew that was time. She had to, even though he was on the property, he saw her every day, we couldn't have her just wander out and wander across the street. We knew at that point it became an emergency.
When you can't be there 100% of the time, because sometimes we sleep, we are humans after all.
Right.
So, and I think the other thing too that I would love to touch on that note, caregiver burnout is a real thing.
Absolutely.
And I grew up, so I helped out in the summers with my grandfather and my grandmother. My grandmother had Alzheimer's, and that was something that I watched happen. He, as vigorous and independent and this, old school veteran that he was losing his mobility and his abilities. His mental load was too much because he was giving 150% to her. And there are so many folks that I made this commitment to this marriage and I'm going to make it work. And no one's questioning that.
Right.
No one's questioning that you love your parent or your spouse or your brother. No one's questioning. What it is we're watching you decline and you're not the one that's not well.
Right.
And so when that burden becomes as heavy as it is, then let's be proactive for the both of you, for one of you. Let's make some different conscious decisions so that we don't lose the healthy one early, and then give 150% to the one that doesn't understand or is having a hard time and really, truly does need more options and more care, more stability.
Right. And a lot of times the caregiver is close to the age of the person they're caring for.
Mm-hmm.
And physically, it's hard. Mentally, it's very strenuous. And I see people that just age. Jeff's brother was, he was a godsend and helping out with my mother-in-law, but he's 70 and I would see him just physically exhaustion on his face when I would go see her.
Yeah.
And he needed it as much. He had promised to keep her in her house, and he was trying to hold on to that promise.
Yeah.
And she didn't know what the promise he had made by that point. She didn't know what promise she had asked him to make. She knew she liked her house because it was comfortable. It was, she knew what it was.
I think that's the point though, is that she didn't know what she was asking at the time.
Right.
Like a different human being 20 years ago begged you to never make this decision.
Right.
But I didn't know that in 20 years, I was going to fall and break a hip, go under anesthesia, have it completely take me out of my norm. And, now I'm presenting heavily with dementia and I have no control.
Right.
I mean, to what level, right?
Right.
So part of it is, would they really want you doing this if they knew all of that? Would you want them doing this for you if it was you?
Right.
I don't. I've told my husband, I am sure it runs in my family. I'm sure I will one day have dementia unless God blesses me otherwise. But please don't do that to you. Or if we ever have children, please don't. I don't want to put you through that.
So when you were saying that you can't be with them for 24 hours, there is a lot of dementia patients that get sundowning, which you would need somebody 24 hours. You need 24-hour care, which is usually 4 different people.
Yes.
And with somebody with dementia, 4 different caregivers can also be problematic. So and it's very expensive. You're looking at probably $15,000 to $20,000 a month. For the cost. And so you look at that versus memory care in a facility, and you don't know how long they're going to live. So you have to make sure financially, if you can afford 24-hour care, then, for sure that's a great solution. But
Yeah. And so for memory care too, the lowest option I've ever heard of is around $3,800. The highest option, could go to 12, 16 grand a month. It just depends on how crazy you want to get with it. But I would say the median range would be between, 5 and 7,000, depending on the level of care that the loved one needs in memory care. And I do think sundowning is another red flag for memory care. So in the afternoon, if they start to get not themselves, if they start to act out, it's almost like they're having like a UTI. It's really affecting them. Or they're losing their words. They're starting to have like mid-afternoon aphasia all of a sudden, that type of thing. That's typically a red flag for sundowning. Also, a lot of times with dementia residents, they don't realize what time it is. So they could get up at 2 a.m. in the morning. They can stay up all night and think that it's only 9 o'clock, but it's really midnight. And then they want to sleep in all day. So they're naturally reversing their days and nights. Whereas at home, like you're saying, I'm not up 100% of the time. I can't keep an eye on them 100% of the time. It's the same. So here in memory care, that's what they're there for. And then in our memory care, and hopefully most memory cares, if you have someone that wants to get up at midnight and just come hang out with the girls that are folding laundry, great.
Right,
love it.
Right.
Like, come hang out with us. We will talk to you. We'll put a movie on. We'll play music, like whatever we need to do. And then keep them up for about an hour. Then try to lay them back down and see if they're restful. And play it by ear. And we have a lot of residents that are like that have flipped. And hopefully, like, we try to tire them out by doing activities and let them have a full life. Take them out on the bus even. And then hopefully when we go to bed at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever time, they are restful. Some, they never were. Like my mom will never be. She's a night owl. So I think forever until she's 100, she'll be a night owl. So...
Rebecca, how would you suggest starting to talk to people that have aging parents about memory care or about assisted living?
About assisted living or even independent living.
Yeah. I
feel like some parents are against moving, period, which I totally get. I think for me, it depends on the person, the resident themselves. My favorite way is just, especially for assisted living or memory care, to sit down and say, this is a hard decision for us too. And we never envisioned this. This was not our plan for how our fairy tale was going to go as a family. But this is where we are because we love you and it's the safest decision for you. And just kind of coming to them hat in hand and talking about their well-being. Like, Mom, you love playing in the yard and you've fallen in the yard 4 times. And if it's a 5th, it could be detrimental for real. And so I think it's just coming to them and saying, hey, you've been driving, you got in that wreck and hit 4 mailboxes and we can't do that anymore. So I don't want to do this. It's more on me. It's more on you. And I hate it. But at the same time, for the safety of others and your insurance, we've got to take the car. Sometimes the doctors will play the bad guys and give them a cognitive verbal test. And then he'll open that conversation for you. And then some other options are just, it depends on where your loved one is with memory care. So if they're on their dementia path and it's pretty extensively far, I would just say I would move them, pick a day to move them, move their bed in, and then you go out and you have a nice lunch and dinner, whatever is going on, and then you bring them into the memory care and you act like you're going to eat dinner there, or you go in and you do an activity together like you're visiting, and then you show them the new option. Another way that's worked in the past is someone does fall and break something and they go to a health rehab to get stronger, and then they move directly from that rehab into the community. And we just say, we're going to do this until you're stronger and better, knowing that the likelihood of them going home is like 80% or, 20%. It could go either way. And sometimes they do get better. We had a gentleman move in that lived on the lake, moved in 90% better and got to move back home.
Right.
Like, what a dream. That's living. We had another gentleman that moved in, and it was a similar situation, and he chose to stay. He got better, but he realized, I don't need that house because I'm here with friends. I have a life. I'm perfectly content, and my family comes to see me instead of them coming to my house and never leaving. So it's kind of a great, great mix.
I think it depends a lot about, do they have somebody else at their house?
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're by themselves and they've fallen, and even when they get better, I think that, they know the possibility of them falling again. And they're, like you said, with people that are around. And, I know a lot of the elderly people that I am in contact with stop wanting to cook.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's like a big one. If you don't want to cook anymore, why not go to a place that gives you 3 meals a day?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's, even in independent living, one meal a day, and then you can have a bowl of cereal
Yes.
if you want.
Yeah, we do. We have a gentleman that lives here, and he loves his BLTs. And so we had to tell him that the doctor said he could only have one a day because he would eat them breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So it just depends. But I think also when you have these hard conversations, choose the person that's going to be the easiest blow. So pick the favorite kid. Pick the brother that lives in Timbuktu that they can yell at and no one, it's fine.
Right.
Or like my husband is kind of the one to talk to my mom or my dad if it's something feisty because I get feisty. And so he's like, I'll take the heat out of it. Let me talk to them. And so it does help. It does help when you've got, the favorite son-in-law or whomever having those conversations. It takes the heat out of the conversation a lot because just like all family dynamics, if I come into a room and me and you have had a fight, your heckles are going to be up. It's the same with dementia, and it's the same with folks that just have a long-standing relationship of struggle between them. It's easier if my husband goes in and has this conversation versus me because I make you feel this negative way. And the other thing I want to put a blurb out for dementia residents, a lot of times they don't remember things, but they remember, like a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, how you made them feel.
Absolutely.
So they may not
Yes.
remember that you had that fight and what it was about, but they're going to remember that last time you spoke with them, they know it didn't end well because
Right.
they didn't feel good when they don't feel good when they see you.
Right.
And so that's something to think about when you're going in to have these hard conversations. Who's having the conversations? Is it someone that their heckles are already going to be up because 20 years ago you stole my dog? Like, who knows?
Well, and the other thing I wanted to say is with my personal experience, my mother-in-law was combative with caregivers because of the type of dementia she had. So trying to stay in her home, and we started with getting in-home care. She was very combative with the caregivers. So she was making it, not consciously, but she was making it impossible for us to keep her in the house because one of us couldn't be with her all the time. And she wasn't accepting of the caregivers. She was completely different in the memory care. There were maybe a few caregivers she wasn't crazy about, but most of the caregivers she actually bonded with. And it was, it was great to see. And she was,
Yeah, and I think it's learning the residents too, because the whole point of memory care is to have the same caregivers
absolutely.
and for us to learn them. And same with all the buildings in assisted living as well. Like it's on a bigger scale in assisted living, but the goal for them is the dream is to love your loved one as well, to be your partnership in supporting them. Not that we're confrontational and against you and your we're here to be your support and your champion for your well-being. So that's the goal.
Right. And I would say that that's a very important question to ask a facility when you're touring is what is their turnover rate? Especially if you're looking at memory care. What is the turnover rate in the memory care unit? Because the staff, I think, is the key. And my mother-in-law was in Manor Lake, and we were very happy with Manor Lake. So that was, it was a lifesaver.
Yeah, I love that. It took some out of the box thinking. Like this was a couple years ago, year and a half ago.
Yes.
So it took some out of the box thinking for us to find the right solution. And I think you guys really tried everything to honor her wishes. And then, like you said, she just took it to a level where there's nothing we can do because she's past that point of care. Like we have to make the safe decision for her. You can't be walking across the street partying with your neighbor. And I think something else that we could probably touch on is maybe some red flags that you see at buildings. So when you go and you tour these options, independent living, meet the neighbors.
Right.
Go knock on the door. Go see who's walking their dog and pick their brain. Do you even like it here? Do they like your dog? How's the food? How's the housekeeping? Do they help you when you call them? Because I think a lot of places, they're really busy. They're short-staffed all the time. Like they're still using agency and all of these struggles. And then same with, so in assisted living, when you tour, if you tour, same thing. Ask those questions. What's your director turnover rate?
Right.
A lot of these buildings have all kinds of directors, nurses, executive directors. I'm a sales director. They have a business office manager of some kind. It's good to know what the turnover rate is. If you've got a director, well, we've had 6 directors in 6 months.
Right.
What's going on corporate-wise that's making that happen? Like, that's not good.
Right.
Or what's going on with the residents? Are they pushing the executive director out because they're unhappy with you don't know what the dynamic is. And I think also just, what is best for your loved one too? Like, is a smaller environment better? Because if you
Right.
need a smaller environment, a personal care home is gonna be your dream. It's 8 to 10 to 16 people max. That would be great. If you're looking at, if your loved one is a person with a big personality and my mom was a school teacher and she loved speaking with people and she loved crafts and then a larger environment would probably be great for her.
Yeah.
Versus the one-on-one. And so it just really depends on your loved one. And then as you're searching, like the big points, do they have a really great physical therapy? Because if something happens to my mom or dad, can they come in and do that work? Or something happens to me, can they come in? Can they step in and take over?
Well, and are they able to get their hair done while they're there? And
yes.
just little things that, what do they do besides the meals? Are there, games, bingo night, whatever, like whatever social things there are.
Yeah. Does the bus have a lift on it?
Yes.
Because if your loved one's ever in a wheelchair, even just for travel, can they put them on the bus safely with a lift? That's something that I think I know I've forgotten that when I've gone to visit other options.
How are some of the ways people end up affording the options that we've laid out today?
Yes. So, we kind of touched on some different things you can do with the house, like Airbnb, rent some things out. So some families are able to do that. I've even heard of a family that rented just a parcel of land out just to have a camper on it. And that way it didn't touch anything that bothered the family with the house. So there's some solutions there. A lot of folks are using their 401ks or IRAs or, all of the things that they earned during their life, plus Social Security. And then there's also some other options. So the VA, aid and attendance, if you were a veteran or were a spouse of a veteran and you served at least one day during wartime, there is some money there. And so that goes into an account directly to pay. They pay the veteran or the spouse, and then that money can be used to pay for the facility. There's also long-term care insurance. So this is a podcast that we'll hopefully cover very soon. So long-term care insurance, a lot of school teachers, if you worked for Coca-Cola, I believe there's some different big-time companies that did pay into an insurance policy. So don't miss that money. If you were a school teacher, college professor, back in the 70s through the 90s, I think they were coming out with these policies. And so there's some stuff out there that you forget that money's there.
Yeah.
And so that's really great. And then the other thing is just to talk about, so what does Medicaid pay for, right? When does Medicaid kick in? So Medicaid in the state of Georgia really only pays for your traditional skilled nursing home options. Some of them can pay for personal care homes as well, but you've got to do your research and make sure on the front end. And also, if that's your only option, great. Go to her, find the best option, and get on that wait list because there is a wait list there for that. And
also they don't start paying until you have used all of your funds. They allow you a small amount to pay for funeral expenses. If you have a spouse, they allow the spouse to stay in the home. If they don't, the home has to be sold.
Yes.
And if you try to transfer the home beforehand, there is a pretty long look back period.
5 years. I believe, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure it's 5 years.
Right.
And I know for the Veterans Administration, for the VA in attendance, I think it's 3 years. We'll double check when we do that.
The VA allows you to have a little more money too, though. You don't have to be destitute to get that VA money. So that's definitely something to check into.
Yeah. And I think we're going to try to have a lawyer on that does specifically work in Medicaid. So we can definitely pick their brain when they come on.
Right.
So I love
That's
that.
Awesome. Well, hopefully we have helped people today, answered some questions, or given them some different options to think about when they're looking for their aging parents, or any of their loved ones that are aging that they have to take care of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out. You can find me at marketing@manorlakedw.com. Like, email me anytime with any questions regarding anything that we talked about today, because we both are here as a resource. And so I don't want anyone to feel like they're not supported with any kind of questions that they have.
Absolutely. And I'm always willing to look at somebody's home and help them decide what the best options for them are, whether they want to stay in the home and just update it, or whether they want to sell the house or whether they want to rent the house.
Mhm.
And you can find me at resultsbyvicky@gmail.com, and I'm with Anchor Real Estate Advisors.
Yeah, and we are Aging Answers, and we really love helping mature adults live better today. Make it beautiful.